All right, so it's exam day tomorrow, the Monday, the 24th of January 2022 for some people. So I'm just going to quickly go over some exam technique stuff, just some general exam information that might be beneficial. I know not everyone is doing the exam in January, so I will continue to release these videos slowly for the people who are doing it later on in the year. However, as you guys know, it is a 2-hour exam. So again, 2 hours. The number of marks for the paper, for the entire paper, is 90. So that's 90. Some people will take the exam in January, so January of 2022 now. And some people will take it May, June of 2022 as well. I'm going to go all the way to the end of the spec. So this is the PDF, the spec that is found on the website. And the spec is simply detailing everything that has to be learned by the students in order to be ready for the exam. Now, what I've noticed from some students is that the key words or the key terms that come up, they actually don't know how to approach the questions. So I'm going to quickly go over what these terms mean and how you should approach those questions, all right? All right, here we have analyze is the first one. So it says learners examine in detail a scenario or problem to discover its meaning or essential features. Learners will break down the problem into its parts and show how they interrelate. There is no requirement for any conclusion. So when you analyze, you do not have to give a conclusion. Analyze means that you have to keep going back and forth, back and forth. What does it mean to analyze something? All right, so here we have an analyze question. It simply says, analyze the implications of replacing the existing computers with wireless enabled laptops. Now, I didn't read the entire thing, so it'd probably be a good idea for me to go back. You guys definitely need to read the entire thing. I sometimes skip to here in the interest of time. So Seabourn Community Center has a main office and meeting rooms used by members of the community for a wide variety of activities. There is a local area network, a LAN, serving all areas of the center. There is a mix of both PCs, so normal desktops, and laptop computers, and they are all connected to the LAN using Ethernet cables. So not internet cables, again, Ethernet. So that's the thick cable, the thick network cable that goes into the back of the device or the side. The computers vary in age and specification. Varying in age simply means that some might be old, some might be new. Varying in specification means that some might have newer hardware, some might have older hardware and software. Many having been donated by members over the years, the center has been given a grant to replace the computer system. It is considering replacing the system with wireless enabled laptops. Analyze the implications of replacing the existing computers with wireless enabled laptop. All right, so this is a 10 marker question. So this is going to be similar to essay question or answers in other subjects. So the first thing we need to do is to simply break down what we've been given. And what we've been given, we have old laptops that have potentially an outdated, well, old computers in general. So we could start this off by saying these computers are old. So as a result of the age of some of them, we're going to make an assumption here that they're very old because they're doing an update, right? Because of the age of some of these computers, they might have limiting factors, for example, storage, memory, slow processors, just overall being slow computers. Because they have varying ages as well, we might have incompatibility issues. So we might have somewhere the operating system is, I don't know, Windows XP or Windows 7. We might have somewhere the operating system is Windows 98, right? Those operating systems are compatible with that hardware, but because they're so old, they might have compatibility issues with the software. So imagine you have an up-to-date operating system. You should have up-to-date anti-malware software as well. But because these are so old, the new anti-malware software, the new antiviruses, the new firewalls, they will not work on these older computers. So that might be an issue. So you mentioned all those things. So you mentioned the fact that they're old. You mentioned the fact they have different ages. They potentially have different operating systems. You mentioned the fact that they might be incompatible with the software. You mentioned the fact that because they're old, they're probably going to have less storage than a newer machine, and because of that the storage is going to be limited because after so many years will keep using storage. You mentioned the fact that they might be slow because the processor might not be up to date. You mentioned the fact that there might be not much RAM, so again that's going to affect the speed of it. So now we're going to do the typical wired versus wireless argument. So let's go wired first. I'm going to mention wired first. You can go back and forth. So you can say, for example, wired networks normally offer more security. For someone to gain access to a wired network, they would have to find that physical cable in a building. They would have to go and cut that cable and tap it, right? And obviously, that's how they can get people's details. Wired connections are typically more reliable because we don't have any interference because it's wired, it's blinking directly to the devices. It's typically faster as well because of the lack of interference and because it doesn't have to worry about going through walls and glass and interference from other wireless devices. And then we jump over to wireless as well, but we can keep going for wired. I might as well list all the ones. Wired is going to be more expensive for most in most cases because you have to buy a cable or a wire for every PC. So let's just imagine that this library or this company needs to have 50 PCs in that office, right? They're gonna have to buy 50 separate cables and make sure that they're long enough to get to where they need to get to. It's not as convenient. So now when we move over to wireless, we literally do the opposite of what we've just done. So range is generally not an issue for wired, but for wireless, it might be an issue, okay? Because you just buy the cable length you need, it connects, and that's it, you're finished. Wireless devices, they vary. So I might be sitting right next to you with my laptop, and you have 5 bars, and I only have 1 or 2 bars, simply because that extra couple of feet, there might be something interfering with the signal. Wireless is a lot more convenient. You walk into the office, you want to work in the kitchen for half an hour, you link to the Wi-Fi, you're working in the kitchen. You want to go work on the balcony, you work on the balcony. You just move about as freely as you want to. Wireless is also cheaper because you don't have to buy as many cables. You simply have one wireless router or one wireless hotspot, and that's it. You're done. You don't have to buy any more devices to connect anything. Everyone can connect to that one device and they all have internet access. The next point we can start thinking about is hardware. Now, we might be able to cross a few things over. For example, them being newer laptops means that the wireless that's in these newer laptops might still be faster than the wired in the previous ones. It might also mean that we're going to be getting faster PCs in general. So, more RAM, more storage, more processing power means that they're going to run a lot faster. It also means, let's do hardware software. The software is going to be more up to date. So we should have less incompatibility issues. So if someone wants to install, let's say it was in 2022, like now, if someone wants to install Windows Defender, so let me open that again. I keep using this as the example. If someone wants to install Windows Security or Windows Defender 2022 on the PC, there shouldn't be an issue because hopefully they would either have Windows 10 or Windows 11, which is compatible because it's being done now. Let's just assume it's being done now. Another one that many of you might not even think of is disposing of the old PCs is not just a case of, okay, there's a bin, the bin is empty, let's bin the PCs there. No, because these PCs have chemicals and special and precious metals inside of them that are actually poisonous to the environment. So ideally, you want a professional to come, dismantle those PCs, take them away. That's going to cost you as well. So we're going to lead directly into cost with that one. So the initial cost is gonna be quite big, even though this is a grant that they're being given, I believe, and they might not have to pay it back. The fact that they have to go out and buy new hardware, that means new processor, new RAM, new everything, a full new device is gonna be quite expensive. I don't remember how many they said they would have to buy, but the fact that they have to buy them brand new is gonna be quite expensive. They might also have to update or buy new software if they're going to buy new hardware. So there's no point in having a PC that is able to run Windows 11, Microsoft Office 365, or Microsoft Office 2021 or 2022, and then use the same old software that might be incompatible, that might be slower, that might have bugs, that might have issues or vulnerabilities. It makes more sense to just buy new software because security should be a factor as well. That's something I do want to mention later on. So these are all the things that we can mention about this kind of question. And because we're analyzing, we're going back and forth, good and bad, good and bad, good and bad, constantly going back and forth. Okay, well, wireless is going to be more convenient. However, because it's a company or a business, having wired might be better because having a constant good or constantly fast internet speed might be better for most people than it being convenient to walk around the office to work. Some people might want that. So again, we're going back and forth. Again, we have to look at implementation, testing, downtime. We have to look at stuff like that because leaving the system the way it is, you have potentially no downtime because if everything works to a certain degree, it's working. However, imagine an office of 20, 50, 100 PCs and you have to have a team of IT people coming in. That's going to take at least a couple of days to assemble everything first of all. then to test that every single machine is connected to the internet, that every machine, for example, a mouse and keyboard works, the monitor works, that every machine is working the way it should. And if there are machines that are not working the way they should, we then have to replace them. And that's more time. And more time for most companies is going to be more money, because you then have to pay that IT person to replace that, because you bought the equipment. And if it doesn't work, you then have to pay the IT person maybe another day to fix the issue that you found. Now that we're moving to wireless laptops, people can move around a lot easier. And we know that there might be that one person in a company that decides, you know what, I want to take this laptop, I'm going to steal it and take it home. Because it's not a wired device, because it's wireless and people can move around a lot easier, a physical security risk is there. People can just steal it, right? On top of that, we have the fact that it is wireless, means that the wireless signal is most likely going to be broadcasted so people can connect their Wi-Fi laptops to it. And as a result of that, if a hacker is to get relatively close to that building, they could pick up on that signal, they could hack into the Wi-Fi network, and that's going to be a security risk. Because if they get access to one of those laptops or to the main network itself, they can actually do whatever they want. They can sit there and copy all the files off those computers. They can issue or do a ransomware attack where they hold onto those files and request the money before the files are released. They can do whatever. So just being wireless means that there are going to be more inherent security risks, because it would be easier to get into a wireless system than it would be a wired. Next, we have describe, and here on the spec it says learners provide an account of something or highlight a number of key features of a given topic. May also be used in relation to the stages of a process. All right, here's another one. So describe, which we just found on the spec. So describe how a data logging system would be used to monitor weather conditions. So first of all, we need to know what a data logging system is. This question might have been asked previously, but we need to know what a data logging system is. So a data logging system, normally it's an automated system, and the reason it's automated could be varied, but the main one is that we don't need a person to be standing there collecting the data themselves. So it's an automated system, normally with a sensor used to capture data, and this data is going to then be used for future analysis. So you're going to analyze the data in the future. Again, we have an automated system, typically with a sensor attached. So it might be a camera, a temperature sensor, whatever. Because we're speaking about weather, I believe. Yeah, let's stick to temperature sensor, okay? So an automated system with a temperature sensor attached, used to capture, for example, temperature data or weather data. And this data is going to be stored so that it can be analyzed in the future. That's the entire point of logging data, so it can be used in the future. So again, describe how a data logging system would be used to monitor weather conditions. All right, so we have the system set up. It has a sensor, right? So the sensor could be a temperature sensor, so it takes readings at different intervals. So every 5 minutes. Why not every 5 minutes? Because the weather might change really quickly. So every 5 minutes, so that we have a clearer picture of what's happening. So every 5 minutes, that's what, roughly 12 times per hour. After these temperatures are recorded, because we're using a temperature sensor, the data needs to be saved to a spreadsheet or a Word document or whatever system they use. But I think spreadsheet makes the most sense. Hopefully you guys know what a spreadsheet is. It's stored to a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet is then saved to the internal memory of that device. So rather than sending it straight away, it stores it to that device. So imagine it was, I don't know, a Windows laptop. It would store it on the hard drive first, and after being stored on the hard drive, it would then maybe be transferred across the internet to the person who needs to do the monitoring. It could stay on that device, and somebody could come and collect it every so often, but it makes a lot more sense, especially with how technology is working now, to have it just automatically sent somewhere. So I don't know, upload it to Google Drive so people can access it from there, and they'll have all the information that they need. Another really important thing with data is that it needs to be sensible. It needs to be time and date stamped. That simply means every time the data is collected, we said, well, I said 5 minutes, every 5 minutes, so that's 12 times per hour. There needs to be a clock or a date and time associated with it. So here, as you can see, it's 11:39 p.m. on the 23rd of January 2022, right? So every 5 minutes that my data is being collected. So let's say 5 minutes ago, the temperature was 0 degrees, right? And at 11:40 now, it's 1 degree. Then it's 11:45, it's 10 degrees, then 20, then 30, then 40. So when I'm using my data later on, and people can ask me very specific questions, when I'm analyzing my data, when I'm looking at the data in detail, I can say, well, on this day, it went from 0 to 10 degrees in a space of 40 minutes. So when you have to date and time your data so that it makes sense, so that when you're analyzing later on, it's more usable. There's no point in just recording everything and not knowing what day, what time this was recorded, then it's useless to you. Now, the next one we have here is a draw question, right? It says learners represent understanding through the use of a diagram or flowchart. So we have to read what we have to read and draw a diagram. Let's go to this document. I'm sure there's a draw question on this one. Here we go. Draw a diagram to show the interaction or the integration of the systems used by Lake Suites Estate. All right, so let's go through and read this, break it down, and look at what we need to have in the diagram. Lake Suite Estate Agency sells properties in the Lake District. There's a head office with a small number of PCs linked to a network server. The network is backed up using cloud storage system. Agents visit prospective sellers to gather information about properties. Agents use an online form to enter property details into a tablet computer. These forms are then submitted to the head office using a VPN, so a virtual private network. Sales packs are created for each property. These packs are available online for prospective buyers to view. Head office staff contact sellers and buyers via email. All right. Details of all properties and personal details of sellers and buyers are stored on the agency's servers at the head office. Draw a diagram to show the integration of systems used by Lake Suites Estate Agency. The diagram should include devices and systems that could be used, devices to be connected and the connection types used, the flow of data through the system, annotations indicating the information and data to be passed between system devices and users. So essentially draw everything about the system. All the information has been given to us, so we should be able to break this down. All right, so I'm going to open Paint and I'm going to try my very best to draw what needs to be drawn here. There's no right or wrong answer in terms of it being definitely right or wrong. Once you can justify using your drawing why you've chosen something, then it should be fine. So for me, I'm going to say, because they've told us that there's going to be internet access somewhere, I like to put the internet thing in the middle. So I don't know, let's draw a globe, a circle that looks like a globe looking thing. And that should be the internet, right? Okay, so let me quickly go back to my question. It's always a good idea to maybe bring a highlighter with you, a pen, pencil, highlight some important things. There's a small number of PCs linked to a network server, right? So this here tells me that I'm going to make my life easy. It says a small number of PCs linked to a network server. Okay, so in the building, in the office building, I'm going to draw 3 PCs linked to a network server. That's the thing I'm going to do now. So let me go back to Paint. Let me click on this. So let's just say, let's do it over here, PC1. Now you can draw these as boxes. They don't have to be laptop looking devices or PC looking devices, but once you label them, I would label this, sorry guys, I'm using my mouse and my mouse, so it doesn't translate very well to drawing, but that's PC1, PC2, and PC3, right? Label them. They don't have to look like PCs, but once you label them, you should be okay. All right, so it says it's linked to a network server. Okay, network server. I'm gonna draw NS here. So this is the, oh, that's a bit big, sorry. NS here for network server. Again, label everything. Don't do short form like I'm doing now. Write out the full word network server. If this is wanting to be a laptop or a desktop, say laptop 1, desktop 1, laptop 2, desktop 2. And again, NS for me is going to be network server. Now, how do I link my PCs to my network server? Remember, we have 2 devices that can link devices together. We have a switch and we have a hub. So inside a network, a switch is normally used for wired devices, and a hub, or I don't know, a wireless repeater that we have in our houses, that's how we normally use wireless devices, okay? So in between here, I'm going to put a switch. I'm just going to call it SW for switch, and I'm going to link all 3 PCs to my switch first. I'm going to link that switch to the network server. Reason being, again, a switch is used to link devices inside a network. It does not give internet access. Only the router gives internet access. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to link this to the switch. So what will happen is when I need to store something on my network server, the PC will send the file to the switch and the switch will put it on the network server where it needs to go. And when I need to copy something, the network server will send that file to the switch and the switch will say, okay, well, this needs to go to PC3 and it will do that. Next, it says the network is backed up using a cloud storage system, Google Drive, OneDrive. We really don't care. Just a cloud thing would be literally a cloud icon, but we would still label it cloud storage backup, right? So I would say the network server is typically where things are backed up, but if it says the network is backed up using cloud system, this is a bit tricky, not very clear what is actually backed up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to back up the network server. So what would happen is all the PCs would get backed up to the network server, and then the network server itself gets backed up to the cloud. So we have two backups essentially. We have one on, oh, let me go back to my drawing. We'll have one on this NS device here, the network server, and we'll also have one somewhere in the cloud as well. All right, so how do we do that? Draw cloud. Okay, something that looks something like that. I'm going to call it CB cloud backup, and I'm going to go all the way from my network server, but my network server has to do a few things before it gets to cloud backup. It's going to have to go through at least one router, one router, however you say it, right? So I'm going to do the reason I do the bidirectional arrows because data goes in both directions in most cases. Even if you connect the printer, it's going to go in both directions because the printer might send some information back saying there's no ink or the paper is low or there's no paper, there's a paper jam. It's still sending something back. I'm going to put here my router. I'm just going to call it R. The router then goes to the internet. And then obviously that's how it's backed up. There are a couple ways that we can draw this. Now, for the good thing about these diagrams is that you can explain why you've done it this way. What you could have done is you could have skipped out the internet completely. So let me do a red one for that. Skipped out the internet completely, and from the network server here, you just draw a line there. This might be a bit easier, but not as detailed. So I would say do either way you think is good, but make sure you describe. So for example, between the network server and the cloud backup, make sure you say it goes through the internet, sorry, through the router, through the internet, then to the cloud server. So Google Drive, OneDrive, iCloud, whichever one you've decided to use, right? But I'm going to leave mine as it is with the arrow going to the router first, then to the internet, then to the cloud backup, because that's how it should work in real life. Next, agents visit prospective sellers to gather information about properties. Agents use an online form to enter property details into a tablet computer. These forms are then submitted to head office using a virtual private network. I think they said it was a tablet that they used. Did I just read it? Okay, yeah, let's just assume it was a tablet, right? So let me go back to this. Now the tablet, so that stuff that the tablet sends is going to need to get sent to the network server. Now you can just draw a tablet here and draw it straight to network server and say VPN, for example, because once it says secure, some questions won't say VPN. Some questions will just say a secure network connection, but that's going to mean VPN, especially if someone's not working in the same office. So once you're not in the same building and you're doing work off-site somewhere else, it's going to be a VPN. Here we go. So this is my tablet. I'm going to call it T for tablet. It's going to go through the internet, right? You can use differently colored lines. You can draw it straight to the network server here if you want. Actually, let me do it that way for this one. So for this one, I'm not going to go through the internet. So let's just assume the internet was not there. I'm going to draw it straight to network server, right? And then it's a tablet. I'm going to put VPN here, and I'm going to describe a short sentence somewhere that this goes across the internet using a VPN for security, and the files get saved to the network server. Okay, when it gets saved to the network server, other people, so PC1, PC2, and PC3 can also access that file. Let's go back to the question again. Sales packs are created for each of these prospective viewers, head office staff, via email. Okay, so because it says head office staff contact sellers and buyers via email, there might also be an email server, right? It's not going to be very obvious, but you guys have looked at these questions before, so that should be a thing that you've picked up as well. So let me put another box here. I'm going to kind of call this one ES for email server, and the switch is also going to go to that. Again, we use a switch for connecting devices within a network. We don't actually need internet access to go from PC 123 to get to the network server, or from PC 123 to get to the email server. However, we will have to have internet access to get the email out. Okay, so I'm going to put this to the router. Now this drawing is going over the top, obviously, because we didn't need the router. We could have just drawn the internet thing and said it goes there. But again, if you can draw everything and explain it, that's what I would recommend, so that way the examiner who's marking it, there's nothing left for the imagination. Everything is explained as to why you did it. And for example, as I said, I could have left out the router here, drawn a line directly from network server all the way to cloud backup up here at the top, but it just makes sense to put everything through the internet, right? All right, let's go back to the question and see what's next. One thing I left off with the email server thing I just did was the emails are going to be sent to the sellers and the buyers, right? So again, we go from email server here. I'm only putting these dots to highlight it so it's a bit clearer. Email server here goes to the router. Router goes to the internet, right? Let me undo that. And then the internet is going to then forward it on. This is a bidirectional arrow to the person's device. So this might be, I don't know, PC1. Another person might have, I don't know, a tablet. We don't care what they have. They access emails however they want. So this is how we would get to the customers. And again, in the middle here, have a tiny description. Once the email is sent from the PC, it goes to the switch. The switch forwards it to the email server. The email server then connects to the router to give internet access. Once it gets to the internet forwards it using IP address, so TCP IP forwards it to where it think it needs to get to, and that's it. Good to go. All right. Okay, so now that we have all the devices that I can think of, let me just go back and double check. These are the personal details. Head office server. Okay, yeah, I think we have all the devices. If I've missed anything, I'm sorry. Now we need to think about how we're going to actually have these connected both inside the company and outside. So let's start at the PCs at the top. And I would say a sensible thing for a company would be Ethernet. So I'm going to put ETH for all these three wires here. If you can label them as 3 Ethernet cables connecting PCs, or write Ethernet beside each one of them if you have enough space, please do that. Make sure your drawing is big enough. Make sure your writing is clear enough. This is, let me interject here actually. When I look at students' handwriting, it's horrible. Let me just be frank. You guys need to work on your handwriting, because not every examiner is going to sit there and try to. Some examiners, well, most examiners, they get paid by the amount of papers that they mark. So it's illogical to sit there and think, oh, whatever I write, the examiner has to take time and read it. Yes, within reason. But if I, as an examiner, I have the opportunity to read one person's paper for a whole 10, 20 minutes, or it's not that long, but just in general, right? Or I can read 10, 20 more papers in that same time, then I have to be realistic. I cannot read it quickly enough. It's not legible. Then I have to put it to one side and tell the exam board, this is not legible. Okay, some people get to type on laptops. That's perfectly fine. But anyways, let me get back to the question. So Ethernet for all these PCs linking to the switch. Between the switch and the network server, again, I would go Ethernet. If you choose Wi-Fi, that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with choosing Wi-Fi. However, for a company, I would choose Ethernet because of stability, because of speed. Between the network server and the router, the email server and the router, again, I would go Ethernet for almost everything. Yes, it's going to be more expensive. Yes, it's not going to be as convenient, but the speed and stability we get from this is probably going to outweigh the negatives. Between the network server and the tablet, we're going to go across the internet. So we're going to use a VPN, but we're probably going to use, I'm going to say 4G, 5G. And reason I say 4G, 5G instead of Wi-Fi, imagine the person comes to your house to try and sell you something and they want to use your Wi-Fi. It's not going to really look professional, right? So I'm going to say 4G. Just leave it at 4G or 5G, right? So they have their own 4G or 5G connection. Between the router and the internet now, this is where it gets tricky. I would say you could use anything you want. You could use ADSL, you could use satellite connection, but I'm going to say fiber optic. So I'm going to put FO for fiber optic. So that's going to give you the best possible speeds. Between the internet and the cloud backup, I mean, really doesn't matter. That's nothing to do with the company. But again, let's say fiber, oh, that's FO for fiber optic. Between the internet and the person's device, it could be Wi-Fi. So I'll just put WI for Wi-Fi. It could be 4G as well, because I'm on my phone. I use my 4G data or my 5G data for checking emails. When I'm at home, I use my Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi or 4G doesn't really matter for this one. We don't care, okay? That pretty much covers everything. Hopefully the diagram was clear enough, but I'll stop this section now. Yeah, I am going to stop here for now, but I do wish you guys good luck in your exams. This is the January exam. For people doing the exam in May, June, I will continue releasing these videos, so hopefully it is of help to some of you guys. So again, good luck, and I hope the information I gave was useful. I didn't get to cover everything because I've been really busy,